Well, good afternoon to you. The ANC has finally broken its silence on the standoff between Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan and the Hawks, calling for cool heads. The party has come under fire for its poor showing in the local government elections, and it's faced with an increasing chorus of criticism, even from within its own ranks. Political analyst Aubrey Matshiqi joins us in studio for some analysis on the story this week and, of course, the result in the local government elections. Aubrey, thank you so much for joining us. Now, it's been a very, very tumultuous week. A heck of a lot has happened. The ANC eventually joining the fray late on Friday in this ongoing standoff between Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan and the Hawks over his alleged involvement in Asar's rogue unit when he was head of the Revenue Service. It seemed to mirror the thoughts of many in society, though, saying that if there are genuine charges to be faced, the Finance Minister should charge them, but not in a quote-unquote Hollywood manner, and calling for calm heads. What do you make of this quite bland statement that was released by the governing party?
Well, first of all, I think the Pravin Gordhan imbroglio must be quite confusing in terms of how the ANC must respond, given the fact that the ANC itself is not a united political entity, and therefore its own response will be confused. But what I've been interested in are responses in society, which to me are neither about the rule of law nor principle. Because if you look at the imbroglio, it has the appearance of a prostitution of the rule of law in pursuit of narrow political ends. And it is to this extent that President Jacob Zuma and those around him are accused of being behind attacks or a conspiracy against the finance minister. In defense of the finance minister, there is a pretense on the part of those who defend him that they're defending him on the basis of principle. And the mistake they make is to suggest that if indeed there is a political conspiracy against the finance minister, that conspiracy is evidence that the finance minister is innocent.
It certainly puts the ANC in a very, very tight position. And based on the current state of the ANC and based on its utterances, this calling for calm doesn't seem to really commensurate with the seriousness of the situation. One would have expected the ANC to try and do more.
Well, the ANC should not be calling for calm. I think those who are saying if the finance minister is a case to answer, he must, are correct. On the other hand, the Hawks must handle the matter in a manner that is consistent with the rule of law. Unfortunately, what hangs heavily above this whole matter is politics, the factional politics of the ANC in particular, and a very divisive manner in which the party and society have tended to perceive what is happening around the finance minister. I think what informs these perceptions are concerns about the impact on the economy. And one of the dangers we face, if we're not careful as a society, is to suggest that if a citizen is powerful enough, has the support of the markets, that citizen may be above the law. We must avoid that.
Politics playing a very, very huge role in this matter, and with the ANC being the governing party of South Africa, what should it do then? If it's not calling for calm, what should the governing party do? And does it in its current form have the ability to meet this challenge? Well,
one of the things the ANC must stop doing is doing an analysis that is event-based. And the same thing applies to us as a society. We tend to analyze what is happening in South Africa on an event-by-event basis. We don't have an overall picture of what events are telling us and what they're telling us about the direction in which the country is going. So which means what the ANC must do is to accept that the imbroglio around the finance minister is a manifestation of the ANC's own decline. It's decline at a leadership level, strategic level, intellectual level, moral level, and other levels. And to also accept that the result of the 3rd of August itself is a product of the ANC's decline. And therefore, this imbroglio in me is about struggles within the party, either to contain the meaning of the 3rd of August result or to exploit it to advantage certain factional interests.
Now, this week it's been evident that the governing party, the ANC, is extremely fractured. Some analysts have even gone so far as to say that it's the most divided it's ever been in its over 100-year history. Now, in order to meet these challenges, there's a suggestion that it needs to head for an early elective conference. It's only due to elect new leadership in December 2017. But what are we to make of this call? Even Aubrey Matshiqi at the beginning of the week saying that it's not a bad idea as long as it doesn't lead to division in the organisation. But having a look at the ANC's current state, what are we to make of this call for an early elective conference?
Well, the response of the ANC through Aubrey Matshiqi to this call suggests to me that those who support the president, maybe even the president himself, are bullish about their chances. In other words, they believe that if such an early conference were to occur, they would win that battle and cleanse the ANC of Zuma's opponents. But I think those who are opposed to Jacob Zuma are of the same view, that if such a conference were to happen early, they themselves would win that battle and cleanse themselves of Jacob Zuma, his supporters, and everything they stand for.
Can the ANC even pull off something like an early elective conference? I mean, that's an administrative mountain to climb. And we've seen with other provincial elective conferences, specifically I'm referring to the KwaZulu-Natal conference recently that elected the likes of Sihle Zikalala. It wasn't easy to pull something like that off. And there were even questions about whether or not it was free and fair. Now, to pull off something nationally as an organisation, can the ANC be expected to do so?
They can do so, but for reasons that have nothing to do with unity. Quite the opposite. I think they can pull it off because the different factions in the ANC that are doing battle have one imperative in common. They want to capture the ANC and recreate it in their own image. Now, the reason such a conference is an opportunity is because two things have become irreconcilable in the ANC. On the one hand, the interests of the president and his cronies, and on the other, the imperative of the ANC for renewal and regeneration. These two have become irreconcilable, which means the option is open war, open warfare, and that warfare will take place and be resolved and be concluded at such an early national conference, which means actually the ANC after this conference may not be the ANC as we know it. There's not even a guarantee that in 2019, the ANC that will fight the 2019 election will be the ANC as we know it, because this conference actually may end in a split or be followed by a split.
When you say things like there's such internal friction within the ANC and there's these two teams in a sense building up to fight against each other, could we expect a process like that to be free and fair if it was an early elective conference? Not only is it an administrative nightmare, but wouldn't it be open up to nefarious attempts to usurp the true outcome of an elective conference? Well,
what we must bear in mind is the fact that the current tensions in the ANC are part of a continuum of factional tensions that started peaking around June 2005. And therefore, we must not look at what is happening now in isolation from what was happening in the period prior to Polokwane. So they are an extension of what was happening then, and therefore what we have seen is a continuum of tensions, which means, if I am correct, the manner in which battles were fought in Polokwane and the manner in which battles were fought in Mangaung will be consistent with the manner in which battles will be fought at such an early conference. In other words, a lot of cash will be used, state resources will be abused. You can't even rule out that the phenomenon of assassinations that we saw prior to the local government elections will continue into such a pre-conference period.
This current state of affairs we've seen once before, as you've just mentioned. Rewind some 11 years ago to 2005. Extremely binary competition between now President Jacob Zuma, former Deputy President at the time, and then President Thabo Mbeki. Could you see the same thing happening? As you've just said, abuse of state resources, money being dished out to various parties in order to secure votes for an elective conference. But could you see a standoff between, let's say, President Jacob Zuma and whoever the other grouping in the ANC coalesces around? It bring an extremely divisive and binary contest in which we would see one party labeling the other a devil and the other party labeling their opponents also demons. When neither of these two groupings would be innocent themselves?
Well, what the ANC needs at the moment is the emergence of a new majority. And that new majority must subscribe to a new political culture, new values and a political culture that are antithetical to what the ANC has become. Now, neither of these dominant factions, or none of the dominant factions in the ANC today, represent a good future for the party. They all represent a past that is problematic. The question is, how is this new majority going to emerge? Because as you say, the battle we're likely to see is a battle between angels with horns and devils with halos. And when you look at the Pravin Gordhan conundrum, it's very clear to me that the forces that are doing battle are similar. It is a battle between angels with horns and devils with halos. And that is why we must be very careful about reducing the Gordhan imbroglio and internal ANC battles in the lead up to what may be an early conference to a battle between angels and devils, or heroes and villains. There is no such thing in the ANC at the moment. What we have are battles between villainous heroes and heroic villains.
To continue with this political poetry for the moment then, how do the ANC rise above this though? And is it going to eventually come to a point, as many saw it did in 2007 in the Polokwane conference, let's not go with the devil we know, let's go with someone that maybe also has a lot of questions over their head, but seems at least better with the current status quo?
Well, I'm not even sure this question is relevant anymore. I'm not even sure we should spend too much time trying to make sense of this question. And I think part of the reason we keep on asking these questions about the ANC is a failure on our part, is a failure on society, on the part of those who support the ANC, on the part of those who oppose the ANC, to reimagine their future with or without the ANC. I suspect that when we look at the 3 August election result, and you look at, for instance, support for Jacob Zuma in the ANC and outside the ANC, clearly the approval rating for the ANC, for Jacob Zuma inside the ANC, particularly in the leadership structures, is still much higher than it is outside the ANC. But in relation to the 2019 elections, the approval rating for the president that will matter is the approval rating outside the ANC, which means those of us who are speculating that the ANC may fall below 50% and lose power in 2019, if they are correct, questions about the balance of power and support in the ANC may not be as relevant as they were before the 3rd of August. And therefore, questions about what will happen inside the ANC if we're talking about an ANC that will lose power in 2019 may be relevant only to the extent that the internal instability may be one of the causes, maybe one of the reasons why the ANC loses power in 2019.
We live for the moment though, and 2019 is still some 3 years away. Where does the balance of power lie for the moment though? Do you think that President Jacob Zuma still has enough power inside and outside of the ANC to be able to wield power as head of state? Or are we going to see him fall short as we did when he fired Nhlanhla in December?
Even the question about how powerful Jacob Zuma is in the ANC at the moment is not a very interesting question to me. And I'm not directing this at you. It's a question that is about an analytical framework which helps us understand what is happening in the ANC and how that relates to what is happening in the country. Inside the NEC in particular, the ANC, the president still enjoys substantial support. Now, the strength of the president, the strength of the Premier League, which supports the president, and others who support the president, is actually the weakness of the ANC. And therefore, if the argument is that the president has not lost power because of what happened in August 3, and therefore he and those who support him are strong. That, in a way, tells us that the ANC is weak, which means his strength is the weakness of the ANC. The very same weakness I want to insist. If political variables inside the party do not change, it is this strength of the Zuma coalition, which is a weakness of the ANC, that may deliver a result in 2019 that kicks the ANC out of power.